Welcome to Mark's British Airways Fleet Update, looking at short and long-haul fleets.
Thanks for joining us on the British Airways Fleet Update. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click for notifications.
Hello and welcome to the next British Airways Fleet Update here on Mark's Trains, Planes and Trams. Last week's video went down well, nearly 14,000 views and 500 likes on YouTube. So a big thank you. I know I said if you can bang that like button, it does help the algorithm. It certainly made a difference last week. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much indeed. It's great that you keep supporting the channel. It's a bit boring me going press the like button all the time, but it does make a difference. And if you're watching the video, if you can just press the like button and maybe drop me a comment as well, that is really helpful, and it helps build up the channel and support what I'm doing. But on to the important stuff that you're really here for, this week's headlines. Well, the A380 fleet on British Airways has settled down again after a bit of drama. A bit of disruption we'll talk about remains. The Middle East crisis has had a bit of an impact on the fleet. The 787 Dreamliner fleet has also moved to a very slightly better place, with only 26% of the fleet out of use. But what an awful state of affairs that I'm saying only 26%, because 26% is more than a quarter of the fleet. It's still a big chunk of the British Airways fleet. So we'll talk about that, of course. And I'm recording this video on a Saturday morning, and as I speak, there's a British Airways crew on board one of their brand new Airbus A321s at Hamburg Finkenwerder airfield. They're just getting ready to start the aircraft up and bring it across to London Heathrow. So we'll talk about that as well. Well, the British Airways Cityflyer fleet that operates out of London City is probably in the state that British Airways would like all its fleet in, which is no maintenance moves required, nothing to Exeter, nothing from Exeter. And certainly here at Mark's Trains, Planes and Trams headquarters, I've not been made aware of any odd movements or occurrences with the Cityflyer fleet. So that's good news for British Airways. Of course, it's not so good news for my videos, because if all the fleets were like that, I'd have nothing to tell you. But as we'll find out in a moment, certainly not the case elsewhere. On the Gatwick-based Euroflyer fleet, again, as we're in the high summer period, British Airways have clearly aimed, and they've been successful at trying to make sure there's no aircraft under maintenance, because Gatwick in the summer is clearly busy, and that makes sense for them. I predicted on this update last week that Golf Echo Uniform Victor, one of the A320s that was operating out of Heathrow for many years, would return to Gatwick as the BA 9270 on the 22nd of June. That's exactly what happened. The aircraft, I understand, had a couple of modifications around baggage, which works differently at Gatwick to Heathrow, because I understand it's not containerized at Gatwick, and it then worked into the fleet, and it's now flying out of Gatwick as part of the Euroflyer fleet. A321 Echo Uniform X-Ray India operated routinely across on the 27th of June to Marrakesh, but for some reason that I've not been able to ascertain, the airport at Marrakesh closed for about 2 hours, and BA 2812 diverted in Morocco to Agadir. Often when this happens, the aircraft will refuel, await the reopening of the airport that it's destined for, and then fly across. But that didn't happen here. The aircraft didn't reach Marrakesh, and actually the flight crew brought the aircraft back empty as Euroflyer 9750. Call sign is Griffin 9750, and the BA 2813 back from Marrakesh cancelled. So if you do know why Marrakesh airport shut on Friday evening, do let me know in the comments. And just a reminder, really, our expectation is there's 5 A320s on their way from Heathrow to Gatwick. 3 of those, which is Uniform Victor, Uniform X-Ray, Uniform Yankee are now at Gatwick flying as part of the Euroflyer fleet, and Uniform Whiskey, Uniform Zulu, I think will transfer across soon. It may be that A321 arrival that we're expecting Saturday lunchtime will trigger another transfer across, and there's a couple of aircraft in the Gatwick fleet that are due for withdrawal shortly, and clearly the plan is for Uniform Zulu and Uniform Whiskey to transfer across and allow that to happen. So that's your Euroflyer update. But I would also just add that we continue to have Airbus A320 Papa Oscar Whiskey Kilo on hire from Titan Airways operating out of Gatwick. But because I think of the transfer of that additional aircraft, no need to bring in the second aircraft on an ad hoc basis. Papa Oscar Whiskey Mike has been busy flying out of Gatwick for other airlines. So moving across to London Heathrow and sticking with the short haul fleet, what can we tell you about the Airbus fleet out of Heathrow? Well, Airbus A319 Delta Bravo Charlie remains under maintenance at BA at Glasgow. Delta Bravo Charlie Hotel flew to Newquay on the 20th of June as the BA 9273. It's STS Aviation, I believe, at Newquay. 6 days down there and back on the 26th of June. The nature of the visit is unclear. One of the aviation websites said they were going to scrap it, which I must admit I did drop them an email and go, I don't think British Airways is going to scrap an aircraft that it's just spent a load of money on putting in new seats and upgrading the interior. And of course that was true. The aircraft returned back into traffic. If you do see that aircraft in real life, or you see it on one of the aviation channels, you'll see that it's recently had a new rudder fitted that's entirely white, so it looks a little bit odd on the tail. And I think a number of people thought, oh, it's going to Newquay to have its rudder painted, but I understand it's flown back in the same condition. So some maintenance, probably not quite clear why. A320 Echo Uniform Charlie at Glasgow remains under maintenance, and sister ship Echo Uniform Romeo remains under maintenance at Malta. It's been there a little while, 30th of May. And only 3 aircraft currently out of use for maintenance. So those of you that follow this channel and have been watching my updates for a while, you'll know that that's one of the slimmest and shortest updates on the British Airways short haul fleet for many months. Now, I've no doubt once we get to the winter schedules, we'll start to see a bit of an uptick in maintenance. Not a surprise, but that's where we are right now. The other development, which I touched on briefly in the introduction, is the newly built Airbus A321 Golf Tango November Echo Hotel is ready at Hamburg Finkenwerder, and as this video goes live, I think you'll find that aircraft flying across, barring any last minute hitches or problems, as the BA 9251 from Hamburg across to London Heathrow. I expect we'll see entry to service soon after its arrival, and a few other aircraft at Toulouse and Hamburg hopefully getting ready for delivery over the next few weeks and months. Now, the long haul fleet remains in a position. Some people don't like me using the word crisis, but I think it probably still is a bit of a crisis. So I've just summarised there the long haul fleet and what is out of traffic. Aircraft at Cardiff at the British Airways facility. There's an aircraft out in Malta, one in Bordeaux, where the A350s go, because British Airways has committed to that investment at Cardiff to do A350 maintenance, but they haven't yet delivered the work. An aircraft out in Manila, and quite a few aircraft parked up at Heathrow and Gatwick as well. The cancellations level has dipped a bit, but just to give you a feel, Friday the 27th of June, BA 175 cancelled to New York. I thought I'd just update on the Middle East crisis. I'm not proposing a big geopolitical speech here, but clearly British Airways felt unable to operate a number of its flights to Dubai, to Doha, to Bahrain, and those were cancelled. We talked about that last time. Things have settled down a little bit. Dubai flights reinstated, some of the Doha flights reinstated. But interestingly, British Airways hasn't served Bahrain since the 12th of June. And looking through, they're not planning a scheduled flight until the 1st of July. So they won't have served Bahrain for over 3 weeks. Now, of course, Bahrain was removed from the schedules when British Airways announced the cuts in its timetable to address the Dreamliner engine shortage. There was a bit of a kick-off and a bit of protesting from passengers and stakeholders and the Bahraini government, and they reinstated 3 flights a week. But interestingly, they've not been operating those recently, and while they've been keen to get Dubai and Doha up and running, clearly no rush for Bahrain. So let's see what happens there. The 2 aircraft I talked about last time on the Airbus A350 fleet, they remain under maintenance. X-Ray Whiskey Bravo Mike in Malta, X-Ray Whiskey Bravo Alpha in Bordeaux. They both flew out on the same day, the 16th of June, and it's not been the case that 2 A350s have been away for maintenance before, so let's see how that pans out. A350 fleet wobbles remain, I think, with that fleet. What became, a ridiculous saga really with X-Ray Lima Echo Bravo seems to have now resolved itself. The aircraft came back from Manila. We charted its progress on this video channel, and it arrived in Heathrow on the 17th of June. But the aircraft, despite having been in Manila for weeks and weeks and weeks, was clearly not fit for traffic. I'm not sure what was actually wrong with it. One must imagine British Airways pretty furious about this, because as we've talked about here on Marks Trains, Planes and Trams before, I think this is at least the 4th time, I believe, that an A380 has come out of Manila and then either not been available for traffic or has failed on its first or second flight in service. And one imagines a sense of humour, failure within the upper echelons of British Airways, maybe a virtual meeting with Lufthansa Technik, with no tea and no biscuits available, to express their concern about this. So it'll be interesting when X-Ray Lima Echo Charlie emerges to see how British Airways deal with that, and whether Lufthansa Technik do get their act together. But Echo Bravo did eventually get going into the air as the BA55 to Johannesburg. X-Ray Lima Echo Kilo was out of use for nearly 2 weeks at Heathrow. That resumed duties with passengers on board on Friday, the 27th of June, flying to San Francisco. But that was after the aircraft had disgraced itself 2 days previously, when it was wheeled out to fly to Johannesburg on the BA57. The aircraft actually left the gate twice and taxied out to the runway, but it didn't get airborne, as the flight crew found issues with the aircraft on both occasions, eventually taxied back to the gate. That flight was delayed overnight and actually operated on the 26th of June, 23 hours late. So bizarrely, there were 2 BA57s operating within an hour of each other, and X-Ray Lima Echo Golf in the A380 fleet ultimately was given the job of flying those passengers out a day late to Johannesburg. It turned round on the ground, actually swapped over with X-Ray Lima Echo Alpha, which was already in Johannesburg, and operated the return flight 14 hours late, departing at 12:06, and that got back into London Heathrow on Friday night at 21:33 instead of the 07:30 that the passengers were expecting. A little bit of an update on the 777 fleet. There's a few aircraft stopped in the longer term. Yankee Mike Juliet stopped since the 13th of May, Victor India Bravo since the 21st of June, and Victor India Echo since the 25th of June. They're all parked up at London Heathrow. Victor India Oscar has been at Gatwick since the 22nd of June, and its unavailability led to the cancellation that day of the BA2037 out to Orlando. Gatwick-based Victor India Tango from that fleet returned from maintenance at BA Cardiff on the 25th of June. BA 9175 into Gatwick. Commercial duties resumed the next day as the BA 2157 out to Antigua. Heathrow-based Sierra Tango Bravo Charlie 777-300 flew the BA 9176 to Cardiff on the 26th of June for some maintenance attention. And just to touch back on the Middle East crisis, on that day the US launched its attacks on Iran. That led to a number of airlines choosing not to fly, and also airspace was closed, so they had no choice, and the airports were closed in some cases. But Victor India November on the BA 105 21st of June, that flew all the way from Heathrow across Europe, and the aircraft was just west of Cairo over Egyptian airspace when it turned around. Now, interestingly, the aircraft had enough fuel to return to Heathrow, so the crew had clearly been aware that there were risks to this operation, and they'd chosen to leave Heathrow with a full tank of fuel. And I think that's quite an interesting development. So that very much worked in their favour. Although they were well on their way to Dubai, they were able to turn round over Egypt and fly all the way back to Heathrow. And no doubt that sort of vindicated their decision. Pretty frustrating for the passengers. But I think while some people struggle a bit with these returns to Heathrow, it does just make sense in many respects. British Airways can look after its passengers a lot better at Heathrow than at outstations, and it also gets the aircraft and the crew back to allow the next flight to operate. And while it might not be great news for the passengers on the BA 105 that day, actually, if the aircraft's then available to fly another service, the overall disruption to customers across the airline is significantly less. So Victor India November flew an 8-hour flight from London Heathrow back to Heathrow, and that takes us on to the Dreamliner fleet. Luckily, the activity is a bit less than previously, so I can get through this, but Zulu Bravo Juliet Golf remains out of use at Heathrow. Now, that aircraft did reach the headlines a little bit with the incident on the 15th of June on BA35 out to Chennai. And I understand it was initially reported as a flaps issue, although I've seen reports the engines actually need attention on that aircraft. It hasn't worked since, although it has been allocated work, but subsequently not picked that up. Down at Cardiff, Zulu Bravo Juliet Foxtrot 777-8 is undergoing Club Suites fitment. Hopefully that will be drawing to a close. Zulu Bravo Juliet Charlie remains under maintenance at Cardiff, and Zulu Bravo Juliet Hotel is also Club Suites fitment, about a month behind Juliet Foxtrot. Brand new aircraft, the very last of the 787-10s with Rolls-Royce engines from that batch of 12 that were ordered. A bit of messing about at Charleston, a few issues to resolve. A very interesting LinkedIn post about that acceptance that I'll just pop up on the screen from one of the British Airways employees. But the aircraft was able to fly on the 21st of June from Charleston to Cardiff, 3 days at Cardiff, and then up to London Heathrow on the 24th of June. And the aircraft has subsequently worked 3 consecutive daily rotations to Toronto as the BA93 and back as the BA92. Now, similar news to the 777 fleet, but not quite such a happy outcome, which reflects the fuel range and capability of the 787-10. But Zulu Bravo Lima Bravo operated the BA 109 to Dubai on the 21st of June. As the conflict in the Middle East worsened, it turned around over Medina in Saudi Arabia. So it got a little bit further than its 777 sister, and it returned to Europe, but it didn't sadly have enough fuel to get back to Heathrow, so it touched down at Zurich, and then the crew, I think, were pretty much out of hours, and they stayed overnight in Zurich, and BA109 was operated from Zurich back to London Heathrow the next day, reaching Heathrow in the evening at 16:44. Now, many of you familiar with this slide. This shows you the 787 position across British Airways, slightly improved, but not anywhere near where BA would want it to be. And you can see it's the 787-8 fleet that is bearing the brunt of the issues. Now, a couple of those aircraft are stopped for club suites fitment, which is obviously a commercial decision by British Airways. Nobody was forcing them to do that. But the 787-9, 787-10s have also got some issues, and it's 26% of the fleet stopped. Last time I was talking about a number over 30%, so slight improvement there. Well, just about wraps it up for this week's update on the British Airways fleet. Thanks to everyone who's watching this. As I say, do give us a like, do drop a comment. That would be very much appreciated. And I always acknowledge Flyer Talk, but I think very much an important part of what goes on in the world of the British Airways fleet, those people that post on Flyer Talk, and it's always useful for me to get hints and tips, information, pointers to go off and do a bit more research. Do Google British Airways Flyer Talk fleet status or something like that, and you'll get taken to the part of the Flyer Talk website that's got the latest information, the updates, and discussion on various matters British Airways. I'll be out and about researching for the next update over the next few days. I look forward to bringing you another British Airways fleet update very soon. Until then, stay safe and enjoy your videos.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and click the notification button so you don't miss any of the great trips Mark has coming your way on this YouTube channel.